Making a cattle drive this morning onto a fresh paddock. We're getting ready to move them off of this farm. They've been on here about 70 days. It's December 15th. As you can see, they're pretty happy to get onto their fresh stockpile. We got about 4 days left on this farm, but we're staging them. We're going to be walking them to the next farm, which would be the Judy farm. You can see this lane we built. They're coming from about a half mile over there, probably closer to a mile. But we put in temporary lane like this, and that lane will be taken back up. That allows you to move cattle right where you want them. And this stockpile was grown. Well, we haven't grazed this since about the end of August, middle of August. And so it's had a good long recovery period. It's fully regrown. Cattle are going to do well on this. As you can see here on the right hand side of this fence, this has already been grazed and it's turned kind of a brown. We took the green out of it. But I tell you, you can come back to this here in about 45 days and you'll be surprised how good a forage this is. We'll have to give them more of it because they took the quality out of it. But there's still, the cows will eat it a lot better than they will hay, and they're grazing. That's what cattle do, is they graze, and they prefer grazing. But you can see these cattle, they're pretty raucous this morning. They're just really happy to be moving, and we are stocked today. They're on about 2 acres. There's 300 cows here. So you're looking at 300,000 pounds on 2 acres. That'd be 150,000 pound stocking density per acre. Cattle are doing well. They're just taking the tops off and we're moving them. The neat thing about this winter stockpile, of course, is as long as you move them forward, we're not putting in a back fence. And so the cattle are constantly moving forward. There's no need to keep in a back fence because they're not going to go back on what they were yesterday. But you can see the body condition. All these cows have got calves on them. We've got fall calving cows in here and spring calving cows all mixed together. And you can look at the body condition on those cows. I mean, with a calf on them, I would say most of these are somewhere between 6, some of them even might be 7 body condition scores. There's a big fat one. Look at that fat thing. Just wonderful body condition for December, almost Christmas. And we've got super fat cattle. You can see the tail enders. They're still coming down the lane here. You've always got your slow ones at the back. Usually those are your youngest ones. Maybe your older cows as well. But the cattle here, they're going to graze this for today. Then in the morning we'll move them. And we're going to do a road cattle drive. In 4 days we'll actually be walking them up the road. And so yeah, everybody says this is a lot of work. Well, the cows do most of the work. We're the orchestra director, and these are our subjects. But you've got to move them. You got to keep these cows moving in the wintertime. Even if you're feeding hay, which we haven't done. We haven't fed a single bale yet. But don't feed them in the same spot. Keep them moving. You see these cows don't ever get any exposure to mud. They're never in mud because we don't make mud. That's how you keep cattle healthy. You don't have to give them all these wormers and all this crap. Just keep them moving. Follow nature. That's what we're doing. We're trying to manage and sync with nature. I'm going to sign off. Good day to you folks.
So I pull the wire through. Here's your wires on the spool. What I do is I pull it through around the handle, and then that locks it so no more wire can come off the spool. And then all I do is I take this, hook it over the fence like that, and now you have a connection. Now you have a connection here. So now your poly wire is wrapped around your high tensile wire, And I don't know if you guys can see it or not, but I can see it. You see those stainless steel strands in there? Those make connection with the high tensile wire, and then all that powers your poly wire. So now this has current running through it, and the cows get shocked, they touch it, and then you don't want to touch it. So that's what you do with this end. If you can just do your perimeter wire and then either set up a temporary divider to divide your pasture in half or whatever, so your runs aren't as long going across it. Like if I was going to graze this 10 acres, I wouldn't run a poly wire from this end all the way to the other end. I would set up a temporary wire going down the middle, and then I would start them. I'd start them probably where the gate is here, and then section every day until they got to that end, then jump them over to the other side, and then run them all the way back, section every day. And then when they get to this end, jump them back to the front, and then graze them back up here to where the gate is, and then pull them off of it and bring them to the next one.
This piece here he's pulling out. Okay, that's welded onto our luggage rack, and he's got just an eye bolt there. Okay, and then the distance from your rack out is about 10.5 inches there. If it's not that distance, when he puts that reel in, it'll hit. The handle will hit right here. Okay, so he's got 10.5 inches, and he's got a little mark there on there. See that mark? We just drive a mark there, so you know you got it far enough out. And then the diameter of the pipe, 1 3/4 inch. Okay, and the reason that diameter is important is his next step here. He's going to take a Terragate geared reel, and it sets down in there. And Casey, if you want to give this length right here, put the tape measure up there. That's pretty important. In other words, the depth of that. Okay, we're at 6 inches. So if you get it deeper than that, this won't bottom out. You want that reel to bottom out the handle, okay? So now he's got his geared reel in, and now he's going to tie on his non-conductive handle. And you get one of these with every Terragate reel that you buy. So Casey's going to put a slip knot in there. Slip knots are extremely important. The same knot you use tying your shoe. Okay. That slip knot allows him to grab this piece right here, and just one pull is done. Pulls it out. So now he's going to tie on cold over here. There's the high tensile fence clear back here. One of our tree swallow houses there. And we always hook on around a post, so we've got some rigidity there. So now he's hooked on cold, and he's going to take off across this paddock. And because he's by himself, we don't have Alex out here this morning, our farm manager, he's going to go about 100 feet, stop, and step one of these in right from the four-wheeler seat. You'll see how this works. So if you're actually putting out a paddock all the way across this whole paddock, he'd need more than 4 posts. This is just a demonstration. But folks, these pipes on the back, this is where I used to put my reel. I still have them here, and we can use them in pinches if we need them, but they make a really good backrest for stacking up. You know, we can get 100 posts in there with this bungee cord. Casey will show me how we fasten those on. So he'll put that bungee cord on, and let's say he had 100 of them, 100 posts. We've got a bigger bungee cord that goes over the top here. It's a little bit longer. And this longer bungee cord allows you to put another 50 or whatever over the top of your first bundle. But so Casey can take that one and strap on the additional. There you go. And so whatever, if you put it in a paddock, you need 20 posts. Pull off 20, set them over here, put your bungee back on the other 50 or whatever you've got left, and use those 20. So we're going to take off. Casey's going to actually put this fence in, and he's going to take off across this paddock on the four-wheeler. The key to this thing, folks, is you're not holding anything. The four-wheeler's packing all your material. So there he goes. You always ride side saddle. So if you had another person with you, you just throw one off. But see, he can just put it on, step it in. He's ready to go again. Folks, this has got to be easy and quick. If you're putting out multiple paddocks, you've got a job to go to in the morning. You don't want to be out here for 2 hours putting in fence or taking one up. I did this for many years by myself. had 3 herds that was moving morning and night, and you can do it, especially if you got it set up like this. It just makes it so darn easy. Okay, and so now he's down, let's just say we were at the end, he puts in his final post, and Casey, you want to grab that reel, and let's just go right back up on the wire, and let's show him how we hook it up hot up here. So we're going to take this, he's taking it up. Folks, every time he turns that reel, it spins 3 times. Like, Casey, let's leave that one on and just make a rectangle. Come over to this post over here and hook it up hot. So we're just going to make a triangular paddock here real quick, kind of. Just show you how we make it hot. We don't use alligator clips to make it hot. So he's got to his distance. Look at this. So he's pulled his wire up tight, okay? So he knows about where it needs to be. Wraps it around that hook about 3 times. Now when you hook it on there, he's got to let loose of this or he's going to get shot, and he can't be touching the metal. There you go. There you go. He's powered it up. And you always go to a post so that these right here are keeping it on that post where it can't slide up and down your wire. That's what keeps that tight. But when he wrapped that poly braid on that hook, that made it all hot. So when you go to pick that up, Casey, he knows which part to pick up on. There you go. You don't want to touch the metal. It'll knock your tail off. That thing's hot. Okay, now he's going to reel that back up, and I'm going to have Casey get on the 4-wheeler and actually drive over this high tensile wire up here without getting off. And I'm going to cover that part of our grazing next. Our grazing setup is really cool. We have a deal set up on this 4-wheeler. Gosh, it saves so much time. You don't have to get off and step on the wire. He's driving over 170,000 PSI wire up here at full blast without having to get off the 4-wheeler. So you don't need to worry about opening the gate. You just drive over the wire. And you don't get shocked either. So here we go. I'm going to get up here where he's going to drive over it so you can see what happens. Okay, here he comes. There's your high tensile wire. It's about 30 inches off the ground. And he's going to hit that. Boom. Full blast. He's going to come back around. I'm going to have him slow up just a little bit. Okay, Casey, let's just go a little bit slower. There you go. See, it hits that bar, pushes it down, goes right underneath the 4-wheeler. How cool is that? Folks, that saves you hours a week. And the pain of having to get off that 4-wheeler, put your foot on the wire, then drive over, then get back on the 4-wheeler, it just really doesn't work very well. So, yeah, that's pretty cool, getting off and not having to get off. So here's the dimensions on it. So he's got a tape measure there from the bottom, which is right here. It comes up to a point. It's 57 inches, okay? So if you had, let's say, a 4-strand fence and the top wires, say 3 foot, you can drive over all of them. Just don't stop. Go straight ahead, straight on, okay? And then the braces, coming back to the luggage rack right here. What's that dimension, Casey?
22 to the brace.
Okay, so we got 22 inches, okay? And then the width at the very bottom. The width at the very bottom.
A little over a foot. 12 and a half, 12 and a quarter.
Yeah, 12 and a quarter inches, okay? So when that wire hits this, where he's got his hand, and it guides it, there you go, all the way down. And when it gets to there, there's nothing on the bottom of that 4-wheeler for it to hook on. What you can do as you're going across your paddock, if you get too many posts and you can't carry them all, you just take and lay a pile on the ground. Make sure you leave one sticking in the ground so you can find the pile. And then when you're done, you can just take your 4-wheeler and come back and get your posts.
Where do you get those posts?
These posts are the best ones made in the world. They are an O'Brien. Don't go down to your local farm store and get, and I'm all about local. If they try and convince them to carry O'Brien post, not those crap. They sell these things as big around as your finger. The spike, you can't get them in the ground. We have found the best reel in the world too.
What's that?
Area promoting products.
Give it all to
I'm gonna give it up.
Not a paid endorsement.
It is a New Zealand company. Terragate has got the best reel. This is probably about 14 years old. This wire. Folks, polywire, you'll be lucky if it lasts 3 years. And that's because it starts fraying. It starts catching on stuff. And next thing you know, half of your steel filaments in there are broken. And now your conductivity just plummets through the floor. And so, you know, you hear people say, well, I tried that polywire, I just got tired of it. Poly braid. Leave away, don't mess with that.
Is that the name brand, Poly Braid?
That's the name of the wire. There's several different manufacturers. Well, I'm telling you, I might as well tell you the best. We get ours from Powerflex.
Okay.
Right here in Missouri, and I've tried them all. This is the best. It's gonna cost you some money, but it's not that much more than the ones that don't work. So I'm gonna buy the one that works. Woo! Yeah. But this is a grazer's eye thing. We don't step off 1.4 acres for 400 head anymore. I used to do that. And now I'm looking at my grass, the tips, making sure that I don't overgraze it.
How many cows are there here?
Well, total head in that herd right now is about 390. Woo! Yeah! Yeah! Woo! Well, you know, a lot of people say, but Greg, I don't have time to move my cows. It takes too much time.
Yeah.
You got to go get cowboys and round them up and dogs to bite at them. I mean, look at these cattle. They're doing all the work. I just moved the wire. Look how slick they are. Cattle are fat.
How can you tell they're fat?
Right
How
there.
can you tell they've had enough?
Right there. Right there, that bone, the hip bone, right in front of it. Well, you won't find any in here that's got an indentation.
No.
But right in front of that hip bone on the back, there will be an indentation sunken in. I call that the death triangle. And if you continue to move it, like right there, that bull.
He's got a little.
That's not a death. It's sunken in just a
You
tiny
can
little
kind of
bit.
see it.
I mean,
No flies.
the flies on the back of the cows, like this cow here, she's got flies.
Yeah.
That's one we bought. She's not a southpaw.
Wow, she's got way more flies than everybody else.
That cow was only brought 60 miles from us, but she wasn't born on this farm. So be careful when you go buy livestock and they're not adapted to your farm.
You said you have always kept cattle. Did you always farm cattle this way, moving them so much?
No, we just got into doing it right several years ago when I was going broke.
Oh.
I was going broke, going the conventional way, and folks, I love the cattle. I love the land. I love the forages, but I was going broke. And I'm like, I've got to change. I've got to do something different, or the bank's going to own me. And so I had an old guy tell me, what you should really focus on, is, especially as a young person, when you're first starting out, is to focus on the animals. Make sure that what limited income you have, save it and buy livestock with it. Stay away from metal. If you can afford a tractor and pay cash for it, that's fine, but don't go out and get a loan to buy a tractor starting out. And that's what I didn't do. I first started, I bought a tractor, the equipment, everything. And that's because that's what I was told to do. If you're a farmer, you gotta have a tractor. I think too many people go out and buy a brand new truck, a brand new baler, brand new mower, rake, all this stuff, a hay trailer. It just keeps going on and on and on. And then you go, well, where's the cow herd? Well, we got them over here. And you go look, and they've got 15 cows. I'm like, what? Those 15 cows aren't going to service that kind of debt. You've got to have a whole lot more of these than you do equipment. Otherwise, you don't have a chance of making a profit in the cattle business. Yeah.
Why didn't you didn't just give up cattle? You You somehow found a different way.
Yeah, and I'll have to give credit to Alan Nation.
Okay.
Alan Nation wrote an article back in 1980. Let's see. Let me get the year right. 1997. The name of the article was "Do You Have to Own the Land?" And the gist of his article was, look, land ties up too much of your equity starting out. Why not go out and just find some land and lease it? And I'm like, oh my gosh. So at the end of his article, he said, your sole purpose in life should not be to own the land, but to control the land. And boy, I tell you what, that one sentence hit me like a brick in the forehead. And I immediately started going around the neighborhoods looking at this land that nobody's doing anything with. There's nobody on that land. You need to go investigate it. And that's what we've done.
Wow.
So I started leasing land the first farm was 1999. And today we've got 16 farms. And we run 1,620 acres, and 4 of those farms we now own. We bought them, we paid for them. And folks, the lease payment is 100% tax deductible. A land payment is not. Only the interest. You can't deduct the principal. If I'd have tried to save up enough money to buy the land that we control today, I never would have got it. We're continually working on these farms. We're continuing to lease new farms, and life is pretty good.
And what do you offer? So they say somebody doesn't have any land, they want to start grazing cows. What do they offer?
I'll give you a range. Our leases range from free. We don't pay them anything.
Yeah. Okay. Keep it mowed for them.
Well, more than that, we're building ponds on these farms. I'll pay for the pond. I'll stock it with fish, stuff like that. Fence. I mean, we put up fence. Brand new, good-looking fence around the perimeter of the farm. They may not even have any fence on the farm. The pastures, probably junk. They're probably taken over with brush. They got a lot of thatch in them. Our highest lease is probably around $25 an acre. But now, if you're going in on a farm that's got a handling facility, it's got good fence on it.
Okay.
It's got good roads leading to it. It's got electricity. The pastures are in excellent shape. You can be prepared to give, well, in Missouri, probably $50 to $100 an acre for it. Justin, these plants were grazed 40 days ago. And what we're looking at is the tips. Make sure the tip of your grass has got a point on it. If you come back and your grass looks like this, and you're grazing that, you're in trouble. That plant is not recovered, and you're grazing it off again, and now it's going to be that long. That ain't good. You want to make sure your plants are fully recovered. You know, when people start grazing plants before they're ready, we call that grazing the roots. You're grazing the roots off your whole farm. And that's because now you're depending on the root to push the grass plant back up. Instead of using the solar collector. See, when you leave a nice solar collector, there's the sun. It's catching that sunlight, and it's growing the plant back with the leaf and the solar panel that you left intact. And over time, your roots get shorter and shorter and shorter, less carbohydrates, less energy stored in your root system. And then if you hit a drought, you are done. No growth, zero. You gotta sell your cows or go buy hay. Justin and I, we can eat this until we fall over dead. We can't stay alive on this, you and I.
Yeah.
Those cows can eat this same grass, worthless grass, they call it, whatever, stuff you mow in your yard, goes on the ground. They can eat this and put on a very valuable, healthy protein to feed America. We took that same animal, we put that animal in a feedlot, and we made her a granivore. She's not a herbivore anymore, she's a granivore. So we took her, and she's a fossil fuel machine now. It's ridiculous. We took a solar-powered machine, and we turned it into a fossil fueled machine. 100 million cattle in feedlot in the United States today. They're up 95, 96, whatever that percentage is, huge. And so we've degraded the landscape. Those people that live around those poor feedlots, I feel sorry for them. You can't, your eyes burn when you walk outside. We took them off the landscape. And we put them in these feedlots, and oh, cows are causing degradation and all. Yeah, the way we're raising them we are, but not like this.
No.
Healing the landscape. Cattle were meant to be out in this, not standing. And everybody said, well, they stand in mud that deep in the feedlot. Folks, that's not mud. That's manure. that's why they feed them antibiotics. Every biteful of grain they eat in those feedlots has got antibiotic in it. If they don't, the cattle will die. Oh, and consequently, the antibiotics make them put on weight faster. And then we're feeding that to our children.
Yeah.
That's a healthy product. There's no healthier product.
There's hope there.
High beta carotene, very high CLA.
More and more farmers are transitioning from continuous grazing their livestock to a higher level of grazing management. Their goal is to save time and money by grazing their livestock more days throughout the year, and therefore having to feed less hay to overwinter their herd. So watch and listen over the next few minutes as these Virginia grazers explain how they're truly gaining ground.
What we used to do is just take the whole 40 acres and put a 25, 30, 40 head of cattle on it, and they just eat until there's nothing there, and then first thing you know, they're pulling up the roots. But that's the way majority farmers, we all did that. But now, since we've increased our rotational grazing in our fields and upgraded, and on this farm right now we have approximately 60 head of cattle right here now, where we used to run 25.
On this farm we've got 22 permanent paddocks. We run about 100 to 120 cows a year. We make hardly any hay here. Most of it's all grazed. We attempt to stockpile fescue to graze in the wintertime, and we try to have these cows eating grass at least 300 to 320 days out of the year. Minimize hay feeding as much as possible.
We started in the cattle business in around 1994 with about 30 cows on 100 acres. We've since grown to approximately 300 cow-calf pairs on 900 acres, and we've done that pretty much solely based upon year-round rotational grazing systems. And for us, that's probably the most economic, sustainable type of farming that we can think of.
This mountain farm has been neglected for 50 years when I bought it, and I've been working for the last 30 to improve the forage capability. And before, on a hilly farm like this, cattle would tend to graze in some particular areas, and they'd overgraze one area and undergraze another. And with the rotational grazing, I can control where they're grazing in and prevent that from happening. I think my carrying capacity is approximately doubled since I went to the intensive grazing, and the forage base is greatly improved. I can tell a tremendous difference.
Year-round rotational grazing is much more economical to us because we have less hay feeding, less hay costs, and we have less fertilizer costs because we recycle nutrients more efficiently.
Things that make it more efficient is that when the cow's grazing it, she returns 70% of what she consumes back to the soil. If you harvest it for hay, you're removing huge quantities of nutrients that you have to then carry back as fertilizer. The other thing it saves on is the fuel and just the cost of running the equipment. Not even talking about the labor it takes to roll up all that hay, both to harvest it and then to store it and then to take it out of storage and haul it back to her. By letting her graze the grass year-round, it's just a whole lot more efficient system.
None of this clover was overseeded. It came up naturally with good grazing management. Plus, with nitrogen prices now running about 70 cents a pound, we're probably putting 80 to 100 pounds of nitrogen back in the soil for free.
When you've got a good sod and it's there, and it holds down and keeps down erosion, you've definitely made some advancement.
Once a farmer adopts a rotational grazing management or management-intensive grazing, certain changes take place in the system over time, and often those changes start on the surface but quickly move to beneath the surface. You get much more root mass, which just pumps the carbon or the organic matter into the soil, which turns the soil into the sponge.
With rotational grazing, I think we're actually gaining ground. We've gone from about 2 to 3% organic matter up to possibly 5% organic matter. This allows us to retain nutrients more. We have better nutrient exchange capacity. We also have more water retention and holding capacity, which helps the plant and the soil through times of drought.
When you have a thunderstorm, the response you get to for those pastures that have had this rest period, this 40-day rest period with the debris that's on the surface is huge. And that's the first thing that most guys recognize when they start rotationally grazing is how quickly the grass can recover after even a half-inch of rain when it's been dry for a month.
It's difficult to realize the difference in rainfall runoff between a continuously grazed pasture versus a rotationally grazed pasture. To really see the difference, you actually have to be out there during the heaviest thunderstorm of the year. NRCS uses a rainfall simulator to demonstrate the effects of infiltration versus runoff on pasture surfaces. These pasture samples were collected from actual pastures just down the road from each other. One represents continuous overstocked and overgrazed pasture. The other represents a rotationally grazed and rested pasture. All rainfall runoff is funneled into a collection jug on the front of the demonstration table. This allows us to visually compare both the volume and clarity of the runoff.
The most important nutrient we have to manage is water. With rotational grazing, particularly during the summer, we have more water infiltration because we have a better cover on the ground. Essentially, the cover intercepts the water particle and allows it to enter into the ground versus running off.
By the end of the demonstration, it's amazing to see how much more runoff occurs on the continuous overgrazed pasture versus the well-rested, rotationally grazed pasture. Here you can see how much more water actually soaks in and absorbed under the rotationally grazed, well-rested pasture, and how much more water actually runs off the continuous grazed pasture. When it gets really dry and you get a big rainfall event, how do you want your pastures to perform when your forages need every drop?
Have increased my carrying capacity by about 50% since I have moved to rotational intensive grazing, and I'm very pleased with it. I've noticed an improvement with the animal production and also the forage production.
When we first had this place, it was 35 acres here in one field. And in the wintertime, you were lucky to get 2 to 3 weeks of stockpile grazing out of it. Once we broke it into 4 paddocks, we can almost 4 times that, just because you're not wasting as much.
Well, on the bottom line, it is more than doubled my grazing capacity, and I wouldn't care to say if it hadn't tripled it.